3 years into my marriage with my mute husband, he still refused to be intimate with me. I looked down at my lace nightgown, then watched his retreating figure as he left the room without hesitation. I decided I wouldn't settle anymore. It was time to set him free. The next morning, as I was about to pull out the divorce papers, I suddenly heard his thoughts in my head. Why hasn't my wife changed out of her nightgown yet? I froze, then quickly glanced across the breakfast table at Eric Wilson, who was sitting there stiffly. The tips of his ears slowly turned red as his urgent thoughts continued. Is Honey looking at me? She's so cute. I want to kiss her and do some bad things, but I'm not good enough for her. Oh no! She is so sexy. I can't help it anymore. The next second, a strange sound filled the air. Ding! This novel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. The atmosphere suddenly turned eerie. Eric's whole body shuddered, and the dumpling he was holding with his chopsticks fell to the ground. He abruptly stood up. I'm finished. I'm going back to my room. He signed to me, then tugged at his shirt and rushed back to his room. I thoughtfully looked at the untouched dumpling on the plate opposite me, beginning to wonder if the voice I just heard in my ear was merely a hallucination. Although Eric was mute, there was nothing wrong with his mouth. Usually, when we had breakfast together, he'd eat 3 or 4 bowls of whatever was served. This time he hadn't even finished eating, and it just so happened that his trouser zip had come undone. Was it really just a hallucination? Why hasn't she changed out of her nightgown yet? The voice I just heard echoed in my mind. I looked down at the lace nightgown I was wearing. Last night, after my self-esteem had been severely damaged, I'd collapsed directly onto his bed and fallen into a deep sleep. This morning, I'd planned to change into some clothes before going out for breakfast. But when I remembered his utterly indifferent gaze from last night, I instantly deflated. It didn't matter what I wore. He wasn't interested anyway. I'd simply gone out and sat at the breakfast table, just about to pull out the divorce agreement that my assistant had drafted overnight, when I heard that strange inner voice. Thinking about the source of that odd voice just now, I fell silent. If he cared for me in his heart, why put on 2 different faces? My heart skipped a beat. Suddenly, I remembered his last inner thought before his trouser zip came undone. But I'm not good enough for her. Could it be that for 3 whole years, he'd been feeling insecure? 3 years ago, at a charity gala, I casually helped Eric out of an awkward situation, when someone was giving him a hard time. That very night, Edward Wilson, Eric's father, thoroughly cleaned Eric up from head to toe and drove him straight to my house. In that moment, I felt like a queen. After all, the Linwood family hasn't known poverty since my great-grandfather's time. My casual act of kindness was misinterpreted by others. Looking at Eric, wrapped up like a Christmas turkey, with his fair skin and beautiful face, and water droplets still clinging to his long eyelashes, I swallowed the words of refusal that had been on the tip of my tongue. I decided to go along with the misunderstanding. I must admit, I am extremely lustful. This kind of eye candy is indeed rare in our social circle. Even if he were mute, he'd still be 1,000 times better than those posh boys from wealthy families. I suppose lust got the better of me. When Edward smoothly suggested a possible marriage alliance, I found myself nodding, thinking of Eric's adorably flushed ears back at my house. Eric had no say in the matter. He didn't even get to go back home. He became my live-in husband just like that. The outside world gossiped endlessly about this unconventional marriage, but I couldn't care less. So what if he's mute? It's not like he's impotent. Who would have thought that the live-in husband would have a mind of his own? That very day, he chained up his trousers. Well then, I'm not one to force things. It's not like he wanted to be a live-in husband anyway. No one had bothered to ask him about it, treating a living, breathing person like an object. I felt a bit guilty, to be honest. But he was already here, married to me. We could take our time to develop feelings. However, I never expected it would drag on for a whole 3 years. He wouldn't sleep with me, wouldn't let me kiss him, wouldn't let me touch his face, wouldn't even hold my hand. He wouldn't even lie in the same bed as me. I tried to force myself on him once, but as soon as I touched his body, his eyes welled up with tears. I was stuck, not knowing whether to continue or stop. It was quite frustrating. Was my personal charm really that lacking? I sat up, about to question him. But he quickly closed his eyes and turned his head away, with an expression of enduring great suffering, as if I were some sort of cowpat sitting on top of him. That time, my ego took a massive hit. I didn't speak to him for 2 whole months. Perhaps feeling he had hurt me, Eric took the initiative to hold my hand for the first time. He led me to the dining table and hand-fed me. He simply doesn't understand our kind of insatiable demands. I want to get it all in one go if I offer some benefits. So that night, I put on the battle gear my best friend had bought me. She said it would drive men mad and make women jealous. She was being too modest. Looking at the few straps in my hand, I closed my eyes for a moment, deciding to call it a lace nightgown for now. While Eric was in the shower, I snuck into his room and lay on his bed. My nose was enveloped by his scent, and all sorts of images flashed through my mind. But they were just flashes. Because the moment that man opened the door, his gaze fell on me. He immediately closed the door, leaving me alone in his room. I suppose emotions tend to be amplified late at night. Even with my thick skin, I couldn't help but feel genuinely upset at that moment. I called my assistant and had him draft a divorce agreement and send it over immediately. But now, resting my chin on my hand, looking at the divorce agreement I hadn't even taken out yet. Open drawer, put it back, close drawer. Smooth and fluid movements. My mood greatly improved. I've been coveting Eric for so long. Divorce? I wouldn't divorce even if my father did. I thought he didn't like me, which is why I considered setting him free. Satisfied, I puffed out my chest and looked at that tightly closed door, unconsciously curling my lips into a smile. Insecurity is a man's best dowry. I think I might have struck gold. The door was unlocked. Eric had indeed changed his trousers. My gaze fell on the damaged pair draped over the chair. Just as I was about to pick them up for a closer look, a pair of pale, large hands snatched them away and stuffed them behind his back. Eric's expression was uneasy as he hurriedly signed to me. "Do you need something?" Well. His gestures were as distant as ever, but his thoughts exploded like fireworks in my ears. "My wife's come to see me. I'm so happy. Why is she looking at my trousers? Has she discovered my dirty thoughts? No. My sacred wife must not be defiled. Why isn't she saying anything? Is she angry because I didn't have breakfast with her? Or is it because I didn't hold her hand this morning? Could it be that she saw what's in the bathroom? Oh no, I'm in big trouble. What? What thing?" I frowned, my gaze involuntarily drifting towards the ensuite bathroom. His thoughts paused for 3 seconds before erupting again in shrill alarm. "Why is she looking at the bathroom? She's really discovered that I took her clothes. I'm done for. My head was buzzing. I looked away, and the voices in my ears quieted down. She hasn't said anything, so maybe she hasn't noticed. What excuse can I use to get her out of here? I need to get rid of her things in the bathroom quickly. It's all my fault for not controlling myself yesterday." "What things?" Saliva caught in my throat, making me flush red in an instant. A large hand gently stroked my back, patting slowly and softly. His other hand brought a glass of water to my lips. I took a few small sips, following his guidance, finally suppressing the shock in my heart. "Are you feeling better?" Eric signed after putting down the glass. I nodded. Glancing at the ensuite bathroom, I felt my face grow hot. Hastily grabbing his hand, I made up an excuse. "I'm still hungry. Will you come and eat something more with me?" Eric obediently let me lead him, his ears filled with jubilant cheers. It wasn't until I sat down at the dining table that my racing heart finally began to slow. Eric kept his head down, eating the dumplings on his plate. As usual, he would take a bite for himself, then feed me one. The moment he looked up, Eric withdrew his chopsticks and hastily averted his gaze. "I really want to get my wife to put on some clothes. I don't think I can handle this much longer." No, I'm not a spendthrift husband. A chill ran down my spine. I immediately stood up, stuffing the half-eaten prawn toast into his mouth. I'm a bit cold. I'm going to put on some clothes. As I quickly turned away, Eric's delighted thoughts drifted from behind me. If my wife puts on clothes, I won't have to worry about ruining my trousers. Yay, trousers saved. See, I told you I'm not a spendthrift husband. Well, it seems he's quite adapted to his role as a live-in husband. I was a bit speechless. He's the one who's adapted to being a live-in husband. He's the one who says he likes me in his thoughts. Yet he's also the one who won't get close to me. Luckily, I'm generous enough not to quibble with this drama queen and his split personality. That night, I snuck into Eric's room again. With the added bonus of hearing his thoughts, how could I let this opportunity slip away? The sound of running water in the bathroom gradually diminished. My heart was pounding so hard I feared the duvet couldn't muffle it. For all my daydreaming, this was my first time actually going through with it. There was no time to overthink. Click. The bathroom door opened. Through the steamy mist, Eric emerged wrapped in a towel. As my live-in husband, Eric naturally didn't need to work. While I was out managing the company, he rarely left the house. His skin had become incredibly fair and smooth from staying indoors. The sight made my ears burn. As he approached, he noticed the lump under the duvet. I peeked out with just my eyes, fixated on his lean muscles. Eric froze. Why is honey in my bed? Run! In the next second, he covered his upper body and fled in panic. Only to find the doorknob wouldn't budge no matter how he twisted it. It would have been strange if it did open. I had locked the door. Eric, we're legally married. Why can't we sleep together? Eric turned around, grabbed a shirt from the sofa, and promptly buttoned it up to the top. I watched him and pouted. Such an old-fashioned prude. Eric lowered his hands awkwardly and stood to the side, head bowed. His inner thoughts answered for him. I'm not good enough for my wife. I'm just happy to see her normally, I don't dare hope for more. She only likes my face. If something happened between us and she met someone she truly liked later, she'd hate me. His damp hair fell across his forehead, hiding the emotions in his eyes. Fighting to control my wildly pulsing temples. I swung my legs out of bed and strode over to grab Eric's shirt collar. Caught off guard, he was easily thrown onto the bed. What was the point in talking to such an insecure mute? Gripping his chin, I leaned down and kissed him without hesitation. Before Eric could react, his slightly parted lips gave me an opportunity. As soon as my hand touched his waist, he forcefully pushed me away. Eric's face turned bright red as he tightly gripped the waistband of his trousers. His expression resembled that of someone who had just been taken advantage of by the hooligans. In the dim light, he huddled in the corner of the bed, his eyes filled with rejection. He must have been truly upset, as he didn't even bother to use sign language to communicate with me. I felt a bit frustrated. We had already held hands before. I thought that slowly nurturing our relationship would eventually lead to kissing and intimacy. Who knew that the moment I touched his lips, I'd lose all sense of control, desperately wanting to pounce on this shy little lamb. Why isn't my wife speaking? Is she angry because I didn't let her kiss me? My wife's lips are so soft and fragrant, I want to kiss them again. But I'm not worthy. Bloody hell. Not this again. Hearing his self-deprecating thoughts, my eye twitched involuntarily. Resisting the urge to confront him, I slowly inched closer to his side and tentatively touched his hand to comfort him. I couldn't rush this. I needed to uncover the source of Eric's insecurity. My gaze unconsciously fell on Eric's lips, which I had just kissed swollen. I swallowed hard and lay down next to Eric, looking at him longingly. I won't touch you. Can I just have one more kiss? Please? I begged. Happiness makes one's spirit soar. Yesterday, we did more than just share a kiss. Sitting at the dining table, I couldn't help but laugh as Eric fed me breakfast. Is my wife so happy? Is it because she kissed me last night? Or is it because the breakfast is delicious today? My wife looks so beautiful when she smiles. I almost choked on the steamed dumpling in my mouth. No way. Could my smile really affect him that much? He's not just insecure, he must be a bit of a secret flirt too. I'll eat by myself, I said, looking at the steamed dumplings on his plate that were no longer steaming. I took the chopsticks from his hand, wanting him to eat something himself. Why doesn't my wife want me to feed her anymore? Am I not doing it well? She can't be tired of me just after kissing me, can she? I knew I wasn't lovable. If my wife can get bored just from kissing me, she'll probably divorce me on the spot once she gets my body. No, wah wah. There was a buzzing in my ears. Yet Eric's face remained impassive. His hand didn't even shake as he picked up a dumpling. He's such a good actor. If we praised him up a bit, he could be a small-time celebrity in the entertainment industry. If he keeps wailing like this, he'll flood the house. What a drama queen. I quickly picked up a steamed dumpling and held it to his mouth. It stopped both his mouth and the chaotic thoughts in his head. I spoke softly, "It's not that I don't want you to feed me. The dumplings on your plate have gone cold and won't taste good." Eric obediently opened his mouth and chewed quietly. The dimple that appeared at the corner of his mouth betrayed the secret delight of this little black sesame dumpling. So my wife was worried about me going hungry. My wife cares about me. I can exchange kisses for my wife feeding me dumplings. Should I let my wife feel my abs tonight? I've been working out quite well lately. Feel his abs. Holding down my leg that was about to jump up involuntarily, I stuffed a few more dumplings into Eric's mouth. Who said this mute was boring? This mute is fantastic. The word abs had been bouncing around in my head all day long. Some unfinished documents from the office were temporarily sent to my home by my assistant. Previously, I would have breakfast with Eric, this mute guy, without any interaction and then head off to the office. Who knew this reserved weirdo was actually pretending to be so serious on the surface? In reality, he was wolfing down 4 or 5 bowls of breakfast just to spend more time with me. I couldn't help but smile, staring intently at the pen in my hand. Stupid hand! Sighing quickly. I want to feel those abs. Eric didn't come into the room, but instead sat on the sofa not far from me, pretending to read a book. My wife is actually working from home today. How blissful to have her by my side. I wish I could be even closer to her. Should I ask if she wants some fruit? But she's working so diligently, would I be disturbing her? Oh no. I slightly raised my eyelids, sneaking a glance at him. Eric's fingers were practically spinning like propellers behind his book. He wanted to use sign language, but he was afraid of disturbing me. What a timid fellow. I sighed, pretending to stretch lazily, my face showing fatigue after working. Darling, could you wash some fruit for me? I'd like some grapes. The timid man sitting across from me suddenly perked up, his eyes bright. Yet his movements weren't hasty. He slowly put down his book before nodding at me. My wife and I are truly in sync. I can get a bit closer to her in a moment. Hee hee, my sweet, soft wife. Soon, a shadow fell over the table. Eric gently placed the fruit plate on the table, tapping my shoulder to indicate that the fruit I wanted was ready. The expression on his face was as indifferent as if he were sending me off to dig coal in Africa. I choked back a laugh, deliberately touching the fork with my ink-stained hand. Oh dear, I've made it dirty. Eric, who was about to turn and leave, tilted his head. I looked a bit troubled, my face pleading, "Darling, could you feed me?" Eric paused, the familiar pink slowly creeping up to the tips of his ears. He nodded very reluctantly. Ah. My wife wants me to feed her fruit. I can stay by her side a bit longer. She smells so good. I want to bury my face. I pouted towards the fruit plate. I want grapes. The grapes, flown in early this morning, were plump and translucent. Combined with Eric's knuckles, which were turning red from nervousness, it oddly took on a different flavor. It was clear that he was being extremely careful, gently pinching the end of a grape and cautiously bringing it towards my mouth. I opened my mouth to receive it, and just as he was about to let go, I quickly darted out my tongue and licked it. I chewed expressionlessly. Eric froze in place like a quail. I tried hard not to laugh, opening my mouth wide. I want more grapes. Before I could finish speaking, the sound of the bedroom door closing beat me to it. As the sky gradually darkened, the last ray of sunlight sank into the clouds. The sweet freshness of the grapes continued to ferment in my mouth. I licked the juice that had stained the corner of my lips, still savoring the taste. My gaze involuntarily locked onto that tightly closed door. I had tasted the appetizer before dinner. Time for the main course. No way! Eric suddenly pulled down his pajamas and jumped back. His face flushed as he crossed his arms in a big X. The warm sensation still lingered on his fingertips. Eric wished he could tear the bedroom door off its hinges. I was furious. He clearly enjoyed it too. Inadvertently glancing at his lower body, Eric froze, then resumed his door-demolishing efforts with even more vigor. Eric, do you really dislike me that much? I wasn't sure if it was the frustration of being pushed away just as I was about to succeed, or if over the years I had unconsciously developed feelings for him beyond mere lust. Suddenly, I felt utterly powerless. An onion needs to be peeled layer by layer, I knew that. But this onion's skin was bloody thick. Eric, does being close to me make you that uncomfortable? The door-wrecking noises abruptly ceased. Eric turned back, looking at me helplessly as I gradually approached him. As my feet touched the cold floor, my muddled thoughts slowly began to clear. Hadn't Eric always been like this for the past 3 years? Seeing me shiver from the cold, he instinctively walked towards me. But he came to a sudden stop just in front of me, his outstretched hand curling back. He simply lowered his head and silently slipped his own slippers onto my feet. Eric's love was too delicate, so delicate that in the blink of an eye, he had retracted his carefully extended feelers. Suppressing the hint of irritation in my heart, I tilted my chin up. I won't force you, but at least you can put on some clothes and let me have a look, right? My best friend had sent over some battle gear the other day, not just for women. There was also a men's version. I dug out the fabric that had been buried at the bottom of the drawer and thrust it into his arms. In my wild imagination, Eric took the clothes and stood there dumbfounded for quite a while. He showed no intention of fulfilling my wishes. The anger I had been suppressing ignited uncontrollably. My vision began to blur. Eric Wilson, do you love me? Clutching his sleeve, I desperately sought the answer I needed. For his sake, I had specifically learned sign language from a teacher. For 3 whole years, I had never seen the gesture for love from his hands. The expected silence ensued. He lowered his head, avoiding my gaze. The room was frighteningly quiet. Fearing I might go mad if I stayed any longer, and say hurtful things to this mute man with his inferiority complex, I found the keys in the cupboard and forcefully opened the door he had nearly dismantled. My sports car raced recklessly down the deserted roads in the early hours. As the cool breeze dissipated some of my anger, I realized something was amiss. I hadn't been drinking. So why was I losing my temper over Eric's same old attitude of 3 years? I slammed on the brakes. The piercing sound of tires screeching broke the silence of the deep night. My heart pounding furiously, I suddenly realized I could no longer hear Eric's inner thoughts. The car made a U-turn, but halfway through, I still didn't head home. My best friend, whom I'd dragged to the pub, was pouring drinks into her mouth with her eyes closed, looking half asleep. Had a row with your delicate husband? Isn't he mute? How did you manage to argue? After downing a drink, she leaned in, winking suggestively. Could it be bedroom troubles? The cold liquor slid down my throat, leaving an unexpected bitterness. Judging by his trouser-dropping skills, I wouldn't have guessed he'd be inadequate. He seems to love me, yet he's always avoiding me. The bitterness on my tongue intensified, making my eyes sting. I rubbed my eyes, not wanting to lose composure in public. Crying over a man isn't my style. The more I tried not to think about it, the more it consumed my thoughts. One strong drink after another, yet Eric's face became increasingly vivid in my mind. Eric's features were exceptionally beautiful. With a wig, he could easily pass for a woman. When I first met him, I was admittedly attracted by his looks. With him sitting across from me, I could eat 3 times as much. Having a handsome man before my eyes made everything twice as enjoyable. But later, coming home earlier, thinking of him unconsciously, celebrating our private anniversaries, I started to feel like someone was waiting for me at home. Among all the lights in the windows, one was left on just for me. I've always said my family is wealthy. Even if you turned the clock back 100 years, my family would still be among the nobility of nobles. The family business always came before family members. Every heir was raised from childhood according to a predetermined template. Only when they were capable of shouldering great responsibility would the previous generation relinquish control and retire peacefully from their high positions. I obediently accepted their arrangements, only occasionally allowing myself to think that perhaps when I was ready to take on the mantle, they would have time to be with me. But when they placed me in that position, they said that half a lifetime of following the prescribed path had left them exhausted, and now they wanted to live life on their own terms. What about me? Was I, born to be the heir, destined to be nothing but a burden? To say they didn't love me, yet I was their only child. They handed over the company to me at the right time, and anything I asked for was given without hesitation. To say they loved me, how could that empty house, those holidays spent alone, possibly serve as proof of love? After forcefully bringing Eric back, I didn't expect him to show me a pleasant face. A life not of his own choosing, born mute, struggling to survive only to be rescued and brought home as a live-in husband by the very woman who saved him. No matter how discontented I was with my family, I had to admit that Eric was an incredibly pitiful soul. Yet this pitiful soul was so considerate it made one's heart ache. On the first day I brought him home, I was held up by company affairs and returned home well past dinner time. Eric had been sitting at the dining table for who knows how long, eyes fixed on the door. As soon as I appeared, he sprang up and dashed to the kitchen with the dishes. In just a few minutes, he emerged again with steaming hot food. 2 bowls of rice were set on the table. He had been waiting for me. He had been waiting to have dinner with me. His world was small, so small that besides me, he didn't even interact with the housekeeper, because he couldn't speak. So he would just quietly wait for me to come home from work, have dinner with me, and accompany me for walks in the back garden. Even on Christmas Eve of the first year, in what should have been a cold and cheerless house, he put on a dazzling fireworks display for me. That was something I had begged my parents for countless times as a child but never received. Eric didn't like talking to anyone besides me, and even seemed a bit withdrawn around others. Such a person who would fade into obscurity if thrown into a crowd. Yet he was trying to please me in ways I liked. If love could only be expressed through words, how would a mute person say I love you? Based solely on the sudden appearance of his inner voice, I rudely intruded into Eric's secret garden, forcing him to profess his love to me. Because of the appearance of his inner voice, I stubbornly treated him as a normal person. Because of the appearance of his inner voice, after hearing his fondness for me, I began to excessively demand intimate actions. Because of the appearance of his inner voice, when it suddenly disappeared, I almost forgot that Eric had always been that Eric who couldn't speak. Once love starts taking shortcuts, one even becomes too lazy to explore the deeper layers of their lover. I want to go home. I abruptly put down my glass. Suddenly, I missed Eric terribly. I missed that Eric who couldn't speak, yet would secretly blush. As I turned to leave, a commotion suddenly erupted behind me. A pungent and unpleasant odor wafted into my nostrils. I frowned and stepped away from the man approaching me. "Miss Linwood, don't you remember me?" The man extinguished his cigarette, a hint of surprise in his eyes. "Too poor to afford a mirror at home? As if someone like you is worth remembering," I retorted, my disgust growing as I looked at the man whose face resembled a hippopotamus. Not bothering to waste more words, I stepped over the threshold. At that moment, his face flashed before my eyes like lightning. The eldest son of the Wilson Group, Charles Wilson. That ugly man who had bullied Eric before. Bloody hell, I ought to slap him twice. "Out drinking so late, is Eric not satisfying you?" Charles narrowed his eyes, his smile utterly lecherous. "Well, I suppose, given what he's been through." My outstretched hand froze midair. "What do you mean?" "Exactly what it sounds like." He shrugged, the playfulness on his face growing more intense, his words laced with temptation. "Would you like to know his secret?" The room was eerily quiet. I had just closed the door when a foot suddenly retracted from the corner of the balcony. Glancing at the reflection in the stairwell, I spoke nonchalantly. Eric, seen enough? A tall figure emerged from behind the stairs. Eric sauntered over to me, having changed into a new set of pajamas at some point. His big, innocent eyes gazed at me. We stood in silence. He couldn't hold back and started gesturing in sign language. Why did he come back with you? TSK. There was an inexplicable hint of jealousy in the air. I sniffed and pretended not to see the hurt in his eyes. We ran into each other on the way. He said he wanted to replace you and marry me instead. What did you say? Do you like him? But he's quite the player behind the scenes, you know. He keeps many women. Although I can't help your career at all, he's not a good person either. He was getting anxious. I suppressed a smirk at the corner of my lips. Watching Eric's hands flying in sign language, my face impassive. Did you agree to him? Seeing no reaction from me, Eric finally couldn't help but tug at my sleeve. So he's not always able to keep up his act after all. I pursed my lips. We'll see. Eric's gaze immediately dimmed, his frantic hands frozen in midair. What a fool. I couldn't hold back anymore. I grabbed his collar and kissed him. You idiot! How could I possibly agree? I gritted my teeth. Looking at this fool who had finally shown his vulnerable side, exasperated. He looks like a hippopotamus. I'd have to be mad to marry him. I'd need to rinse my mouth with bleach after kissing him. Eric stood there, dumbfounded. His adorably confused expression made me tiptoe up to steal 2 more kisses. What you're willing to tell me, I'll listen. What you're not willing to tell me, that's okay too. I pinched his cheek, dead serious. Eric. His shell was too hard, too difficult to express love in a direct and open way. I hooked my arms around his neck, staring straight into his pure, unblemished eyes, and spoke softly. If you love me, just blink, okay? Eric's subconscious wanted to look away. Halfway through turning, he turned back, slowly and resolutely. Once. Twice. Thrice. His frantically trembling eyelashes were like butterflies falling into a mountain valley, desperately needing a point to land. I gently covered his eyes, allowing the garden in my heart to bloom wildly. The butterfly in my palm finally settled peacefully in my garden. Standing on tiptoe, I pressed my forehead against Eric's smooth brow, and whispered in a voice only the two of us could hear. I understand now. I knew it all along. The strap of Eric's undershirt was peeking out from beneath his pajamas. It was the men's style of the battle gear I had sneakily given him. Afraid of ruining the mood, I, the greedy girl, held my tongue. No matter what I did or said today, he would probably try to please me again in the way I liked. He couldn't bear to see me upset. Even more so, he couldn't bear to lose me. When I couldn't hear his thoughts and was giving him the cold shoulder. What was he thinking deep down? When left alone at home, was he secretly feeling sad too? Suddenly, my eyes widened as I snuggled in Eric's arms, unable to help but peek down his collar. Last night, I had cuddled up to Eric, chattering away, but forced myself not to look at his body all night, knowing what he was wearing underneath. But not being able to take a proper look felt absolutely dreadful. All night, it felt like ants were biting at my heart. The itch was so bad that I woke up naturally before the alarm even went off. Thankfully, Eric was sound asleep, so I finally dared to let my bold, perhaps even perverse, gaze wander freely over his body. Wait, was that a bow tied near his navel? I felt a bit annoyed. I should have checked the style more carefully when my best friend sent it. I quietly pulled his pajama collar open a bit more. Swallowing hard, I burrowed deeper into his embrace and squinted to look down. No, that's not it. What on earth was tied there? I couldn't see clearly. How frustrating. I want to rip those pajamas off. As lust clouded my mind and turned into impulse, my hand had just grabbed his pajama collar when I met a pair of confused, sleepy eyes. How did he wake up? I had just promised him yesterday, while holding him, that I wouldn't force him. I sprang out of bed like a startled fish, and looking at the still dark sky, I lied through my teeth. I need to go to the office. I have important business today. Clutching my wildly beating heart, I dashed out of the room. After we confessed our feelings for each other, holding hands and sharing kisses became as natural as breathing. Eric also began to change noticeably. From being initially reserved, he now occasionally showed signs of jealousy. He would even secretly embrace and kiss me after I fell asleep. Don't ask how I know. I installed a hidden camera. Since we promised to abstain, I figured it wouldn't be too much to secretly watch my husband shower during those meatless days. Until this day, when I was in my office, handling documents while sneakily checking the camera feed, Eric was rummaging through something at home. And from the cabinet near the dining table, he pulled out the divorce agreement I had prepared long ago. How could I have forgotten about that thing? Eric's shell had only just begun to crack. What if he retreated back into it? I dropped everything and rushed home. When I arrived, Eric wasn't in his usual spot waiting for me by the door. My heart sank with a sense of foreboding. The divorce agreement was on the table, but there was no sign of him in the room. Just as I was about to turn the house upside down looking for him, an arm suddenly wrapped around my waist, pulling me into a familiar embrace. Before I could speak, I felt something cold against my neck. The hand on my waist tightened, as if afraid I'd vanish into thin air if he let go. Eric, I'm not divorcing you. That agreement is from long ago. I thought you didn't like me then, that I was trapping you. So I had my assistant draw up divorce papers. The pressure on my waist eased slightly. I turned to face him, cupping his tear-stained face in my hands, gently kissing away the tears. I'm not lying to you. We agreed to talk about any issues right away, to avoid misunderstandings. Trust me, please? Eric finally looked up, slowly releasing his grip on me. This was the first time he dared to show his vulnerability in front of me, suppressing my joy at his progress. I thought to myself how much my silent husband had improved. I wanted to comfort him more, but Eric suddenly began signing. Don't leave me. Victoria, please don't leave me. My breath caught, my heart crumpling like paper. A corner of my chest seemed to tear open, letting in a chilling breeze that ached with each gust. I suddenly thought of that secret. Eric's secret. The pain was so intense I could barely breathe. Eric had been abandoned by his parents as a child, then adopted into a hellish situation. He couldn't even speak, couldn't express his pain. Victoria, don't leave me, please. I knew he must be recalling those painful memories from his past. The memories that had shaped him into who he was now. I grasped Eric's frantically signing hands, swallowing the lump in my throat, and handed him the long-expired divorce agreement. Tear it up. Eric froze. I repeated, tear it up. You have the right to refuse anything. Now and in the future, you have the strength to stand up for yourself. Eric, don't be afraid. Don't fear loss. Don't cry over spilt milk. Don't let those unpleasant memories of the past trap you for the rest of your life. Shreds of paper fell to the floor. Looking at his pale face, I wondered how long he had been crying in secret. He looked utterly drained. I was about to get him a glass of water when he grabbed my wrist. He placed a ribbon in my palm, the other end attached to his slim waist. Eric's tear tracks weren't even dry yet, but his cheeks were already flushing red. The fabric felt familiar. So familiar that I knew which garment it was just by touch. Did you put on my lace nightgown? I stared at him in disbelief. Was this appropriate? Eric raised his hands to sign. I was afraid you'd mention divorce, so I thought I'd seduce you. He certainly knew how to push my buttons. Shouldn't you be wearing your own nightwear then? Since when did my husband get so adventurous? You secretly saw me in the men's one while I was sleeping. It wouldn't be a surprise. And here I thought I'd never been caught. A year later, I was at home dealing with company matters. Eric, bouncing around with a fruit bowl, leaned casually beside me, naturally popping grapes into my mouth. After finishing the fruit he fed me, Eric moved closer, his fluffy hair tickling my face. What is it? I asked. Eric looked up, unable to speak, just blinking his eyes at me repeatedly. Confused, I asked, is your eye itchy? Eric froze for a moment, then his eyes and eyebrows flew about in frustration. He swiftly moved to sit on the opposite sofa. I held back a laugh and slowly moved behind him, burying my head in the crook of his neck. Over the past year, Eric seemed to have gained some weight, feeling more solid when I hugged him. Silly, of course I know, I said softly. I knew he loved me. Until I finally peeled away the layers of this thick-skinned onion and claimed the fruit of happiness. Eric couldn't speak, but every moment with him was loud enough to be deafening. The day I met him, the weather wasn't great. He crouched on the ground, hesitantly reaching out to take the handkerchief from my hand. From that moment on, I became his sunshine. Eric's side story. I am mute. Abandoned by my parents as a child. I was later adopted by the Wilsons under the guise of charity. The other children at the orphanage looked at me with starry eyes, saying the director told them the Wilsons had lots and lots of money and could buy me lots and lots of lollipops. They were all so envious. I grinned foolishly along with them, but not for the lollipops. I had a family now. I was no longer an unwanted child. Uncle Edward was very kind to me. He arranged a beautiful room for me, close to him, even closer than his own son's room. It wasn't until later, when I woke up thirsty in the middle of the night and opened my eyes to find him sitting by my bed, when his sticky, damp gaze covered my entire body. I finally understood why he had arranged for me to be so close. He had a peculiar habit. A disgusting, nauseating habit that made me sick just thinking about it. At first, he would just pat my back, rub my waist, and say in a kindly tone that little Eric had grown taller again. Later, as he gradually pushed the boundaries, I began to resist. He dropped the act then, throwing me to the ground, looking fierce and menacing. Who told you to be such a pretty boy? Why else would I adopt a useless mute like you from the orphanage? Pretty. One of my few good qualities. At that moment, it became the shackle that trapped me. I resisted again and again, only to be beaten time after time. The whip marks on my back, torn and bleeding, were proof of his humiliated rage. Unable to have me, he tortured me nearly to death. He could have killed me easily. No one would investigate the truth behind the death of an abandoned child. But he deliberately kept me barely alive, torturing me more and more viciously. Along the way, his son also discovered the joy of bullying. I became the most interesting toy for the father and son. Pretending to be a dog, drinking toilet water, having my head pushed into the sink. I didn't know when these dark days would end. I just didn't want to die. I just wanted to live. Once again, as I was pushed into the swimming pool on the brink of suffocation, there was a splash beside me. Someone had fallen into the water. The grip on my collar disappeared, and another force grabbed my arm, pulling me up. As my vision gradually cleared, I saw a girl as beautiful as an angel looking at me with a deep frown. Embarrassment, shame, unease, complex emotions enveloped me completely. But she just took a handkerchief out of her pocket and handed it to me. Here, dry yourself off. The weather wasn't very good that day. The sky was full of dark clouds, and the heavy rain forecast could start at any moment. As if possessed, I took her handkerchief. Her brow relaxed, and she slowly walked back. A passing companion reminded her that it was about to rain and to walk faster. But she maintained her unhurried pace. I'll run when it starts raining. The noisy outdoors was full of people hurrying along. Only her steps remained as leisurely as ever. She was so different. In my heart, so very different. One day, I finally mustered the courage to tell Victoria about my past. She seemed to have anticipated it, though. She simply grabbed my collar and planted 2 firm kisses on my cheeks, saying, "Well done, darling. You didn't give in to the dark forces." Could it be that my wife had already investigated my background? Seeing my distressed look, Victoria tugged at my belt. "It was that hippo Charles who told me. He couldn't stand to see you happy and wanted to ruin you," she explained. Noticing my anxiety, she decided to reveal everything. That hippo had exaggerated the torments I had endured, trying his best to make Victoria despise and abandon me. But after hearing it all, she simply said nonchalantly, "Your company should go bankrupt." The hippo panicked. "You can stomach such a disgusting person? Tomorrow, I'll make sure your company goes under, Victoria replied coolly. As the hippo tried to speak again, Victoria flashed an enigmatic smile. If you say another word, I can't guarantee whether you'll be sleeping at home or in handcuffs tomorrow. Your family's illegal activities are quite numerous, you know. Before leaving, Victoria turned back to face the hippo. He looked hopeful, thinking she had changed her mind. As he stuck his head out of the car window, she delivered 2 sharp slaps across his face. I wanted to do that back at the pub, almost forgot, she said. I tilted my head back, trying to process everything. No wonder within 3 months, Wilson Group announced bankruptcy. And within half a year, Edward Wilson and his son were behind bars. Victoria untied the bow on my belt, chuckling softly. I've always said, my family hasn't known poverty since my great-grandfather's time. Messing with me is like kicking a steel plate. All right, my mute husband, stop gesturing, she said, patting my face. As things heated up, Victoria leaned close to my ear, her voice sickeningly sweet. Eric. The world is too noisy, but I belong only to you.